Is it all over for buy-to-let landlords? Not clickbait, a real question I hear every single day from investors, even first-time buyers, even tenants, because since 2016, the ground has shifted under our feet. Taxes, compliance, interest rates, and now a renting system that has been rewritten. Yet, demand for renting, although dropping, is still sky high. Rents are still increasing, stock is down, and corporate landlords are stepping into the gap. So is this the end for the traditional UK landlord, or just the end of the old model? Today I'll show you the 5 structural changes that broke the old buy-to-let playbook, what the Renters' Rights Act really changes on the ground, why rents keep rising even as landlords leave, and if you're new here, I'm William Gale, founder of the British Home Group. Since 2013, my companies have been involved in thousands of transactions worth billions of pounds in property across the UK. We buy, we sell, we manage. So I see this from every seat as a homeowner, investor, dealing with tenants and policy impacts. What I'm sharing isn't theory, it's what I watch happen in real deals every week. So, what's changed since 2016? The 5 nails in the coffin, so to speak. Let's start with how the old model died, the 5 nails in the coffin. First nail is Section 24 interest relief restrictions. Pre-2017, many landlords offset 100% of mortgage interest against rental income. Today, for individuals, you can't. You get a 20% credit instead. So in translation, if you're a 40% high rate taxpayer, your taxable profit can be wildly out of sync with your cash profit. It turns works on paper into loss after tax, which seems suspiciously unfair, especially when you consider Section 24 doesn't apply to buy-to-let owned by companies. So owning 1, 2, 100, 1,000 properties would be unaffected compared to mostly smaller landlords that own some property in their own name, consequently being hit with Section 24. The second nail in the coffin is the stamp duty surcharge. April the 1st, 2016, a 3% stamp duty for additional homes was introduced. On the 31st of October 2024, that increased to 5%. So a modest £250,000 purchase would lead to £12,500 of extra stamp duty. Now, of course, that's great. It gives homeowners an advantage when buying against an investor buying buy-to-let, for example, which is good. But what again seems suspiciously unfair of all of this is that it doesn't apply if you buy 6 or more properties at a time as part of one investment strategy. In that situation, commercial stamp duty rates apply, which not only bypasses the extra 5% stamp duty, but means you pay commercial stamp duty rates, which is less than standard stamp duty rates when buying a single property. So how mad is that? The next nail in the coffin is changes to compliance, licensing and standards. More selective licensing, stronger safety obligations, and now the Renters' Rights Act means more documentation, more process, fewer shortcuts. Now, in reality, good landlords, we already do all of this, but the admin load and risk is undeniably higher. In reality, if this leads to higher standards, I think this is all a good thing, but it does add costs. The next nail in the coffin is high interest rates. Cheap money has vanished, changing the buy-to-let equation, but more importantly, the more expensive capital is, the greater value it has to people that have capital. When there is more universal access to low interest rate capital, it allows more players to play the game. Importantly, more smaller players to play the game. As interest rates increase, it gives greater power to mega organisations that already sit on massive volumes of capital to sweep up with less competition competing to buy assets alongside them. The final nail on the coffin is demographics. So the punchline here is the median age of a landlord is 59 years old. So many of these people have already made massive paper gains on these buy-to-lets already, and it's far easier to just sell at that stage in life as opposed to keep going. So the punchline here with all of this is the 2015 formula of buy anything, wait to win is gone. But that doesn't mean all buy-to-let is dead. It's becoming more professional and margins are tightening, but it's still a good business. And it's important that it is exactly that, a business. So let's talk about the Renters' Rights Act. What actually changes for you? Let's strip the fear out of this. So Section 21 no-fault evictions is ending. So you'll rely instead on Section 8 grounds. You can still regain possession for arrears, breaches, if you're selling or moving back into the property, but you must have your paperwork perfect. So expect more court pressure, and timelines matter. Next is rolling tenancies will be the default. So there's less scope for churn timing. Stable tenancies will become the norm. Good if you run a property like a business. Bad if you were relying on frequent resets to raise the rents. Next is annual rent increases. You can still raise the rent annually, but it has to be market evidence based. Otherwise, tenants can challenge it, and if proved not fair, the rent raise can be overturned. Next is the marketing price. You also can't rent the property for higher than the marketing price, so no more bidding wars. Tenants also can't pay more than 5 weeks rent as a deposit, or 6 weeks rent if the rent is more than £50,000 a year. And finally, landlords must offer properties that follow the Decent Home Standards rules and Awab's law, which of course is fair enough. You have to meet 5 key criteria with this: be free from serious health and safety hazards, be in a reasonable state of repair, have reasonably modern facilities, provide a reasonable degree of thermal comfort, and be free from damp and mold beyond minor levels. So the theme to all of this is simple: professionalise or exit. The Act isn't the end of renting, it's the end of casual hobbyist management. I personally haven't sold any of my buy-to-lets. None of this personally puts me off. However, I do recognise the returns are getting tighter, and so I'm not necessarily investing as heavily in property as I would have in the past. Why? Because the money math has flipped. Let's talk numbers. So for example, let's say you buy a £220,000 terrace house. You rent it for £1,050 per calendar month, so you get £12,600 rent a year. Your costs, so allowances, insurance, basic maintenance, let's say that's £2,400 per year. Let's assume a mortgage of 75%, loan to value, interest only at 5.25%. So that's a debt of £165,000, interest of £8,662 a year. So your cash profit pre-tax is about £12,500, minus all your costs, you're left with about £1,500. If you own your buy-to-lets within a company like I do, that's it. You pay tax on that profit. But if you don't, and you own it in a personal name, that is where Section 24 bites you. Your taxable profit equals rent minus allowable costs, which doesn't include mortgage interest. So that totals about £12,500 of rent, minus about £2,500 of costs, so about £10,000 of taxable income. You're then paying tax on that. So at a 40% margin tax, that's £4,000 of tax. You receive a 20% credit, takes about £2,000 off. You're still left with about £2,000 of tax to pay on £1,500 of profit. So you're making, over £500 loss each year. I think the numbers are more than that, but they'll be on the screen. That's why so many landlords say it used to work, now it doesn't, because you're paying tax on a profit you didn't actually keep in cash. 2 fixes people have been applying to get around this. One is buying within a limited company, which has its own costs, rates, extraction taxes, and set up and management costs, but bypasses the Section 24 issue altogether. The second is to just raise the yield you're getting, so converting the property into HMOs or holiday lets, focusing on yield more so than capital appreciation, which is exactly the strategy of big corporates, ironically. That links nicely to what I want to talk to you about next, which is where the homes are going, build to rent and corporates. As small landlords exit, who fills the void? Build to rent and institutional landlords are seeing the opportunity to professionalise the sector and capitalising on it. They're bulk buying property with developers with the view to build multi-generational businesses around renting property. They're not chasing 20% capital gains next year. They're chasing indexed income over 20, 50, 100 years. So why do rents keep raising even when landlords sell. To renters watching this, I get the frustration. If landlords are selling, why are my rents still rising? There are 3 reasons. Many sales are to owner-occupiers. That takes a rental unit out of the rental market, and generally a rented property houses more people than an owner-occupied property. At the same time, demand keeps forming. Household formation has been rising. You can see here how there is a trend between net migration increasing and annual rental growth increasing. And rental supply is falling. More landlords are selling than buying. As a result, you can see here how net private rental stock has been consistently falling. So fewer rental homes plus steady increasing demand for rental homes equals upward rent pressure. This is creating a bigger and bigger opportunity for big corporates at the moment to step in. You can see from this graph that stock of rental properties available are continuing to reduce, and they have a clear path to continue growing their build to rent completions to fill that gap, but not too quickly. They have to let the rental yields increase a bit more first, and that's the way they can manipulate the market. So what am I doing? How am I protecting myself? What I'm doing myself and with my clients is chasing yield over hype. If it doesn't wash its face after tax, it's not investable. Targeting refurbs that lift rent bands and reduce maintenance into the future. Invest in fewer, better yielding assets. Provide quality accommodation. Treat your tenants as customers you want repeat business from. None of this is financial advice. Run your properties as a business and treat your customers with respect, and you'll thrive, which really is a blueprint for any business. So is it over for buy-to-let landlords? For the old model, yes. For professional value-added operators, absolutely not. The UK still needs millions of rental homes. If you run yours like a real business, you can still build wealth steadily, sustainably, and without all the chaos. If this has helped, hit subscribe, drop a comment with your situation, and I'll see you in the next video up here.